Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your real ID at tsa.gov/realid. That's tsa.gov/realid, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff. Plan on flying? In order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID. Learn how to get your real ID today at tsa.gov/realid or visit your local DMV.
It started with just one woman. No music, no crowd, no festival. She just walked out into the streets of Strasbourg and started dancing. And she didn't stop. Not when people stared. Not when her feet started to bleed. Not when she collapsed from exhaustion. Only to get back up again and keep moving. By the end of the first day, she danced for hours. By the third day, she danced for days. By the end of the week, dozens of people joined her. Not because they wanted to, not because it looked fun, but because something, no one knows what, was making them dance too. Within a month, there were hundreds, men, women, even kids, spinning and stomping and twisting their bodies through the streets. Some passed out, some died, and still nobody could explain it. The city was desperate. Doctors were baffled. The church blamed sin. Officials tried everything from prayers to musicians to literal bloodletting. And through it all, the dancers kept going, kept dying also. There wasn't a party. It wasn't a flash mob. It wasn't some medieval TikTok challenge. This was the summer of 1518, and Strasbourg had become the epicenter of one of the strangest, most haunting mysteries in history, the dancing plague. And 500 years later, we're still trying to figure out exactly what the hell happened. Her name was Frau Troffea, and she didn't ask for any of this. One morning in July 1518, she stepped out of her house in Strasbourg, part of what is now modern-day France, and started dancing. No explanation, no reason, just full-body, involuntary movement like her nerves were being pulled by invisible strings. She danced through the heat. She danced through the stairs. She danced through the blistering pain that comes from, not stopping for 8, 9, 10 hours straight. No one could get her to stop. Not her neighbors, not her husband, not the priests. By all accounts, she wasn't smiling or laughing. She wasn't having a psychotic break. She wasn't having a good time. She just looked tired, trapped, like her body had been hijacked. And then, a few days in, something weird happened. Other people started dancing too. First, just a few. Then more. Within a week, there were 30. Then close to 50, then 100 people moving through the streets, all with that same blank, distressed look. They couldn't stop either. The officials were, understandably, losing it. At first, they thought it was a stunt, some kind of scam, some weird traveling performance art, maybe. Then it got darker. People were collapsing, seizing, and dying, all from dancing. Their bodies literally gave out, and still more people joined. You'd think people would just stay away, avoid it like the plague. Pun very much intended, but they couldn't. That was the terrifying part. It spread like a virus you could catch through your eyeballs. You saw someone dancing, and then it was your body that couldn't listen anymore. Strasbourg was spiraling, and the people in charge, they had ideas. Unfortunately, they were about to make everything much, much worse. At this point, the officials in Strasbourg were like, okay, this is clearly bad. People are dying, something needs to be done. And then they landed on the absolute worst idea possible. They figured the problem was, wait for it, that the dancers hadn't danced enough. Yeah, their solution was basically, they're cursed? Better let them dance it out. You know what I mean? So what did they do? They hired musicians. They set up a stage. They cleared out the guild halls and built a literal dance floor in the middle of the city. Imagine a 16th century EDM festival, except nobody wanted to be there, and people were dropping dead mid-song. The logic was that by encouraging the dancing, by leaning into it, the curse, or whatever it was possessing them, would burn itself out. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that absolutely no medieval doctor had ever been right about anything up until that point. So of course it backfired spectacularly. Instead of slowing down, the dancing plague exploded. Hundreds more were pulled into it. The music, instead of helping, became fuel, like throwing gasoline on a fire and calling it therapy. The death toll climbed. People were collapsing from exhaustion, from strokes, from heart failure. Others were carried off screaming, their bodies still twitching and jerking uncontrollably. Meanwhile, the city leaders were sitting there like, damn, that didn't work, I guess. And as the bodies piled up, the question loomed even bigger. What the heck was happening in Strasbourg? And why couldn't anyone stop it? So here's where things get even weirder, because nobody really knew what they were dealing with. And 5 centuries later, we're still arguing about it. Let's start with what they believed back then. The locals were convinced it was a curse, of course. Specifically, a punishment from Saint Vitus, a patron saint of dancers, epileptics, and basically anyone having an out-of-body experience. People thought the dancers had either angered him or been possessed by his spirit. Which, okay, sure, but that raises the question, why now? Why this random summer in 1518? Modern historians have other ideas, and honestly, they're not much less wild. One theory is mass hysteria, or what fancy people call psychogenic illness. Basically, everyone was so stressed, so traumatized by famine, disease, and political instability that their brains short-circuited and their bodies acted out physically, a literal citywide nervous breakdown. Another popular idea, ergot poisoning. That's a hallucinogenic mold that grows on damp rye, and it's the same fungus that people blame for the Salem witch trials. Eat enough of it, and you're seeing things, feeling things, and doing things you have zero control over, including, apparently, dancing until your heart gives out. And of course, there are the fringe theories, secret cult rituals, spirit possession, even early mass psychosis triggered by shared trauma and belief systems. But here's the thing, none of these theories fully explain it. If it was a hallucinogen, how did it last for weeks? If it was psychological, why did it manifest as dancing? And why did it kill people? There's no clean answer to this, by the way. Every explanation feels like it's missing something. And that's what keeps the dancing plague so creepy. It wasn't just weird, it was deadly. And it spread without a cause anyone could pin down. And the scariest part, nobody knew how or when it was going to stop. Eventually, the city realized their more music plan was a disaster. Imagine that. People were still dying, still collapsing mid-step, still trapped in this nightmare their own bodies wouldn't let them wake up from. So the officials switched their tactics up a little bit. This time they went full medieval panic mode. They rounded up the dancers, dragged them out of the streets, and hauled them to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. There, priests performed rituals meant to lift the curse. They made the dancers wear red shoes, sprinkled their feet with holy water, and walked them around the shrine in hopes of breaking whatever spell had taken hold. And weirdly, it worked. Or at least the dancing slowed. Some people recovered, some didn't. But within weeks, the streets were quiet again. The records from that point on, they pretty much stopped talking about it. It's like the city wanted to forget it ever happened. The dancers faded back into the crowd. The deaths went uncounted. And Strasbourg tried to move on, pretending the summer of uncontrollable dancing wasn't something they'd ever have to explain. But here's what's wild. This wasn't the first time that it happened. There were other outbreaks of dancing mania in Europe before and after 1518. Not as big, not as deadly, but enough to make you wonder, what was going on in these medieval towns and why did it stop? Did the rituals work? Did the city's collective anxiety finally break? Or did whatever haunted those streets in 1518 just move on? Because whatever happened once and happened again, what's stopping it from happening right now? We'll probably never know what really happened in Strasbourg that summer, whether it was a bad batch of bread, a psychological breakdown, a curse, or something we don't even have a name for. Whatever it was, it left a scar. Hundreds of people trapped in their own bodies. Some danced until they collapsed. Some danced until they died. And the rest, they had to stand there and watch, helpless, wondering if they would be next to catch the boogie fever, or whatever it was called. It's easy to laugh it off now. A dancing plague. It sounds absurd, but under the surface, it's terrifying. The idea that fear, stress, and trauma could take over a whole community and nobody could stop it. But here's the thing. Back then, they blamed spirits, saints, the devil. Today, we blame social media, mass psychosis, conspiracy rabbit holes. But at its core, it's the same story. A world in chaos, people cracking under the pressure, and one person's breakdown turning contagious. The dancing plague didn't just happen once. It wasn't even limited to Strasbourg. And if it happened then, who's to say it couldn't happen again? Maybe it already is. We're just calling it by a different name. Thanks for listening to this episode of 10-Minute Mystery. I'm Joe. I'm the host. And if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends and your family, and rate and review it to help other curious minds find the show. And if you're into the brief and bingeable aspect of this podcast, but you want to hear something darker, you can check out my other podcast. It's called 10-Minute Murder. Again, thank you so much for listening to 10-Minute Mystery. See you next time.